This is the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather reporting. Good evening. John Tower counterattacked today. He went on the offensive, trying to hang in, hang on, and beat the long odds to be Defense Secretary. This comes as President Bush is now reportedly trying a buy time for Tower strategy. Instead of a quick up or down vote in the Senate, President Bush now reportedly hopes delaying the Senate's confirmation vote may help him bring the Tower nomination back from the dead zone. This strategy has raised questions in Congress about whether Mr. Bush is prolonging defeat for Tower and for himself and further delaying important decisions pending at the Pentagon. CBS News White House correspondent Leslie Stahl begins our coverage.
Calling the campaign against him character assassination, John Tower showed how he got his nickname Old Iron Pants. Instead of wooing the men who will decide his future, Tower lashed out sharply at his former colleagues in the Senate, accusing them of hypocrisy.
Is it an acceptable standard for senators late in the evening who've had a few drinks to come onto the floor late in the evening and vote on vital issues of nuclear deterrence?
He said he regards the no-drinking vow he made over the weekend as a sacred oath, but he went on to admit to marital infidelity.
I have broken wedding vows. I think I'm probably not alone in that connection.
Tower seemed to acknowledge that the odds are against him, even quoting the military commander at the Alamo.
I shall never surrender or retreat. Wait a minute. I'm a little sorry I brought up the Alamo analogy because it just occurred to me what happened at the Alamo.
At the White House, President Bush lobbied one more senator today, but like the 13 Democrats he saw yesterday, Heflin of Alabama was unconvinced.
I've got to finish reading the evidence, come to grips with it.
White House aides say they're into a last-ditch strategy of pushing the idea that Tower has been treated unfairly, with President Bush out front calling on the American people to pressure their senators.
My appeal to the senators has been, look, do what you've got to do, but remember fair play, remember decency and honor.
Despite the growing harshness of the Republicans' rhetoric in public, in his private meetings, Mr. Bush is assuring the Democrats that when this fight is over, there'll be no hard feelings. It's essential for the president to hold on to the spirit of bipartisanship, whichever way the Tower vote goes. Leslie Stahl, CBS News, the White House.
The full Senate's official confirmation debate on Tower was supposed to start today. It didn't, mainly because Republicans, led by Senate Minority Leader Bob Dole, insisted on a delayed and lengthy debate. Still, there was plenty of Tower talk by the senators, for and against. CBS News Chief Washington correspondent Bob Schieffer is on Capitol Hill tonight with the latest. Bob?
Dan, the delay up here means it will be next week at the earliest before the Senate can vote on Tower's confirmation, and even before Dole and the other Republicans spoke today, Democrats were saying it was all just one last-ditch effort to buy time and turn the situation around.
I think they're going to try and drag it out because they feel maybe if they have the president twist enough arms in enough places, they might have a chance to get a majority vote.
No one has told the president or anybody that they're going to vote for him, but maybe in their heart and maybe in their mind that they're starting to inch our way. Only they know.
By midday, the Republicans were gathering to plot strategy.
We're prepared to take each and every step to bring to the attention of the American people the unfairness that has thus far been dealt not only John Tower, but the constitutional process.
Republicans have suggested that Democrats on the Armed Services Committee turned on Tower for partisan reasons, but today Committee Chairman Nunn strongly denied that, saying it was the investigation that changed his mind.
I started off the whole proceeding supporting him, thinking I was going to vote for him. We even had a majority report ready at one time supporting him.
CBS News has learned one incident uncovered by investigators involved a visit Tower made to a military base in the late 1970s. When a witness claims he observed Tower drunk in front of GIs and civilians, deliberately fondling a female civilian employee. That revelation came as the administration suffered a new setback in the Senate. Boren of Oklahoma, one of the conservative Democrats the administration had hoped to win over, announced he'll vote against Tower. And later, another of the undecided Democrats, Bradley of New Jersey, said he'll also vote no. Sanford of North Carolina is expected to announce the same tomorrow. So the odds against Tower's confirmation grow longer by the hour. Dan?
Thanks, Bob. As the tower confirmation fight drags on, the gridlock at the Pentagon grows, important decisions delayed and policies on hold. Our Defense Department correspondent David Martin has a report on the impact of the power vacuum at the Pentagon.
Office workers still show up for work each morning at the Pentagon. Recruits still go through basic training. But when it comes to setting the course of the armed services for the next 4 years, the tower inferno has been about as helpful as a grenade in a foxhole.
The most devastating effect is the missed opportunity, because in your first 6 months in office, you get your one and only chance really to change the direction of defense policy.
As Tower himself said today, there are plenty of tough decisions waiting to be made.
And painful cuts will be made, but cuts that will create a storm of debate both inside and outside the Pentagon.
None of the painful decisions have been made yet and won't be until a new Secretary of Defense is confirmed. For the moment, day-to-day operations are being run by Deputy Defense Secretary William Howard Taft, a holdover from the Reagan administration.
He's a lame duck trying to just make the decisions that are necessary to keep the institution to accomplish its minimal objectives.
Decisions on controversial issues like estimates of the cost of the stealth bomber are being postponed. Tower goes to cabinet meetings but has no authority to make decisions or even bring in his own team.
There are 39 different jobs in that building that are presidential appointments that need confirmation. None of them are being made.
In fact, if the confirmation process can be expedited, I would say within 2 months, we'll have a full team on board.
And if he's not confirmed?
If Tower isn't confirmed and we face a long gap while somebody else is recruited and vetted by the FBI and God knows what else, that could be quite serious.
Pentagon officials disagree over whether Tower is the right man to be Secretary of Defense. But they all agree somebody who can make tough decisions stick has to fill the job, and soon. David Martin, CBS News, the Pentagon.
2 other Bush cabinet nominees were confirmed by the Senate today. Dr. Louis Sullivan for Health and Human Services Secretary and retired Admiral James Watkins for Energy Secretary. And still to come on the CBS Evening News, Ray Brady on a catalog of change that made Sears slash its prices. And David Browning on the immense job of cataloging a freeze-dried library. Reported that Americans' personal income jumped 1.8% in January. That was the biggest monthly rise since October 1987. The report said consumer spending edged up just 0.1%. Consumers may be spending a lot more if the nation's largest retailer has its way. Sears Roebuck's 824 stores across the nation began reopening today after 40 hours behind closed doors, putting price reductions on more than 1 billion pieces of merchandise. CBS News business correspondent Ray Brady reports on reaction to that unprecedented move.
They came pouring through the door all around the country, trying out the new Sears Roebuck, where special sales will be fewer, but prices will be as much as 50% lower all the time.
We are telling the customer that they can shop at Sears anytime, at their leisure, at their convenience, and they're going to get the best price in town.
It's a desperation move by Sears, say some.
Sears had the franchise with the American public, and they really blew it.
They blew it, say critics, because Sears did not realize shopping habits are changing. More and more Americans are going to discounters like Walmart. Result, Sears' return on investment, a key business measure, is less than half that of Walmart.
They lost touch with the consumer, and I think they lost touch with the competition in the retail world around them.
A true American institution, 102 years old. Sears' main strategy through most of its life has been to lure in customers with sales, sales, sales. Now, somewhat late, Sears is joining other retailers in cutting back on sales. Reason? Customers now distrust sales at all stores.
I think they pad the prices, and then, their sale prices are what they would normally get.
So Sears is flooding the airwaves with commercials about its new strategy. But will it win back lost shoppers? Today's opening day at Sears got mixed reviews.
I think it's outrageous. I came all the way down here thinking I'm going to get bargains, and I think that the things are overpriced.
I think you're going to get your money's worth now. And before, sometimes I wondered if I got my money's worth here.
It's more than consumers who have a stake in all this. Wall Street rumors are that if Sears business doesn't pick up fast, corporate raiders will move in and start selling off parts of an old American institution that could be worth more dead than alive. Ray Brady, CBS News, Wayne, New Jersey.
Union officials today threatened to disrupt air, sea, and ground transportation nationwide if machinists strike Eastern Airlines this weekend. And correspondent Peter Van Sant reports a strike could permanently shut down Eastern.
No scams!
Tempers and tension are rising tonight as Eastern Airlines continues its march towards self-destruction. A strike by the airline's 9,300 machinists set for midnight Friday, which could ground the financially hobbled carrier forever.
It's a battle to the end of Eastern. He won't yield, and the company won't yield, and the union says, I'm going to take you and half America down with me.
Eastern is demanding the powerful machinists union, which includes the airline's mechanics, accept $150 million in wage and benefit cuts. The machinists have refused to yield a dime.
Our position right now is 100%, absolutely 100% that there will be a strike at midnight on Friday.
Eastern's losses have been staggering, more than $500 million in just the last 2 years. The airline has responded by shrinking, laying off thousands of employees and cutting back hundreds of daily flights. Late today, Eastern employees began receiving this videotape, warning that support of a machinist strike could put them all on the unemployment line.
If the pilots, flight attendants, and non-contract employees support the picket line and don't show up for work, Eastern cannot survive.
The machinists argue that Lorenzo, chairman of Eastern's parent company, has purposely wrecked Eastern's profits by selling off valuable assets. They claim Eastern wants a strike to destroy the machinists' union.
We need a swift resolution to the difficulties to stop the financial hemorrhaging, plain and simple.
Has he thought about what he's going to do if they go on strike?
Travel agencies report that Eastern's problems are scaring away passengers by the thousands.
Even if they don't strike, they have been tremendously damaged by the possibility of a strike.
Some machinists have already begun removing their tools from Eastern's maintenance hangars.
The people are ready to strike, that's all. They've had enough of it.
Special security guards have been brought in to protect against employee vandalism or sabotage. Eastern says it will try to fly through a strike, hiring mechanics with little or no experience.
The FAA has the principal responsibility for assuring that the airlines live up to their obligation to the traveling public to maintain safe airlines, and FAA is going to do that.
Machinist union leaders said today that if they strike, other unions will help them disrupt air, ground, and sea transportation nationwide. But analysts say the key to a successful machinist strike will be if Eastern's pilots honor the picket lines. That decision hasn't been made yet, leaving the airline's future up in the air. Peter Van Sant, CBS News, Atlanta.
A Texas appeals court today overturned the murder conviction of Randall Dale Adams, whose trial for the 1976 slaying of a Dallas police officer inspired the movie documentary The Thin Blue Line. The court ruled prosecutors suppressed evidence and used perjured testimony in the Adams trial. The prosecution's chief witness on death row for another slaying recanted his testimony in the film. The 40-year-old Adams has served 12 years in prison. Commander in the occupied Gaza reportedly offered today to withdraw troops from schools and refugee camps where they've been accused of provoking violence. His superior, the Army Chief of Staff, spent several hours in unaccustomed surroundings today on the witness stand. Correspondent Terrence Smith reports on a case that has 4 soldiers and government policy on trial.
Today, in a military court, Israel's top soldier, Lieutenant General Dan Shomron, testified in an unprecedented case that has called into question the Army's iron-fisted approach to crushing the Arab uprising. 4 soldiers from the elite Givati Brigade are charged with beating a Palestinian man to death in a Gaza refugee camp last August. The 4 admit they burst into this house while chasing demonstrators and beat and kicked Hani El-Shami in front of his wife and 3 sons.
The soldiers were cursing at us and began beating my father with a broomstick and hitting him with their boots and gun butts.
The defense says that 15 to 20 other soldiers continued the beating at an Army detention center where El-Shami died 7 hours later with a crushed chest. No one else has been charged. In any event, says the defense, the 4 soldiers were just following orders. Explicit and legitimate orders from their superiors to beat Palestinian protesters. In fact, beating Palestinians, sometimes even in view of television cameras, has been commonplace since the early stages of the 15-month-old Intifada, when Defense Minister Yitzhak Rabin called on soldiers to break their bones. Today in court, Shomron said the beatings are permitted not to punish Palestinians, but to deter violence in the midst of demonstrations. The trial, which has been underway for months, has raised the most fundamental questions among Israelis about the moral cost to their own society of putting down the Intifada.
I think about the long-term price, and I believe that the long-term will be brutalizing of the society.
As the Givati trial nears its conclusion, many Israelis are coming to agree that the only solution to the Intifada may be political compromise, not military force. Terrence Smith, CBS News, Gaza.
Of threats to the health of American children with an increased number of the young living in poverty. This study says children already are suffering from cutbacks during the Reagan administration. CBS News medical correspondent Susan Spencer has the story.
Every decade has seen improvements in children's health until this one. The new report concludes that not only is the health of American children not getting better, it's getting worse.
There's little room for optimism in this report card.
The study was done by the National Association of Children's Hospitals. Some findings. A quarter of all pregnant women get no prenatal care. 1 in 5 children is without health insurance, and 7 million kids get no routine medical care at all.
By year 2000, on the current trend lines, 1/3 of all our children will be living in poverty.
Already, immunization rates for children under 2 are declining. Only 60% of kids over 4 gets the basic series of shots, and local hospitals are seeing the results.
In 1988, we saw at least 6 children in the hospital with whooping cough, pertussis, which we didn't see 5 years ago.
The report blames the crisis in general on social apathy, in particular on Reagan-era budget cuts. It calls first for immediate expansion of Medicaid, which now covers only half the children in poverty.
For the first time in 8 years, we're seeing the administration propose an increase.
But the report makes clear that expanding Medicaid isn't enough. Congress has to make a real commitment.
They did it for the S&Ls. They can do it for kids.
Children's advocates think the timing may be right for a change in priorities. It's been ironic, one said, that abuse of one child has long been a crime, but neglect of a whole population of children has gone by almost unnoticed. Susan Spencer, CBS News, Washington.
Canadian sprinter Ben Johnson, stripped of his Olympic gold medal, has maintained he never knowingly took anabolic steroids. But today, his coach told a Canadian government inquiry that Johnson deliberately started a steroid program 8 years ago to build strength and muscle bulk. Coach Charlie Francis said Johnson decided he couldn't compete successfully without steroids. He said top-level competition is virtually impossible without the drugs. He also charged that the Soviet and U.S. Olympic teams both ran sophisticated testing programs to help their athletes avoid detection. A U.S. team official tonight flatly and vehemently denied that charge.
Some serials turn into...
Rises from the ashes. That's an old literary conceit, but the phoenix rising from the ashes in Los Angeles these high-tech days is freeze-dried, brought to life by the love of hundreds of volunteers. David Browning explains.
In the spring of 1986, an arsonist set fire to the Los Angeles Central Library, the biggest library in the West. 2 million books and magazines, and firefighters very nearly lost them all.
The way they could tell where the metal racks were, it was obvious to them because they were glowing cherry red. The steel was actually cherry red. That's how hot it got in here.
Heroic work did save over 1.5 million volumes, but many were singed or smoky or soaked by all the water. To keep them from mildewing into mush, 700,000 books were freeze-dried, frozen for 3 years. And this is the story of how science and some people who care very much about books are bringing the library back to life. They are putting together a temporary library until the old one can be rebuilt. And hundreds of volunteers have turned out to help the library staff.
This is filed alphabetically under the author's last name. Okay?
All right, thanks.
Helping to clean the books, to sort, to file, rebuilding, book by book, shelf by shelf.
I remember when my father used to bring me books from the downtown library, and I felt I wanted to be a part of putting it back together.
They are cleaning thousands upon thousands of boxes of thawed-out books, thrown together in a jumble in the aftermath of the fire. Sorted out and sometimes rebound, most will go back on the shelves, out of limbo.
This looks like a bad section here. This is the science and technology section. This is about the worst one I've had to deal with so far.
Some are beyond repair, but each box also contains scorched survivors.
It's nice to think you're having a part in getting it started again.
And everywhere, there are the volunteers. Some have been coming for months.
Books are a big gift to us.
It's not only just my library, it's everybody's library.
They're students, they're retired people, they are employed people, they are unemployed people, they are all ethnic groups, all nationality backgrounds. It's just amazing.
And slowly, a new library begins to emerge. 35 miles of shelves spread over 6 floors. One volunteer said, "Thank God for the Dewey Decimal System."
We've done 811 pallets. Wow. Very close to 500,000 books. So, we're getting there.
Anyone who loves books, I think, would want to come and do this.
Anyone who loves books should take heart. At a time when books and their ideas are still under siege around the world, here they have brought books, hundreds and hundreds of thousands of them, back to life. David Browning, CBS News, Los Angeles.
And that's the CBS Evening News. Dan Rather. See you tomorrow. Good night.
This is CBS.